Marco mi ha già presentato, però qua sono Chiara e vivo a Londra e lavoro in WhatsApp. Allora, chiedo venia subito perché purtroppo vivendo a Londra da 10 anni, quando parlo di prodotto soprattutto è in inglese. So, what we're going to spend the next 20 minutes is talking about two things. The very first one is going to be how I personally stumbled into a product career at Meta. I'll keep that one very quick because I actually want to spend the majority of the time on the most important lesson for me in these 9 years at Meta, which I call the framework of common sense. So, as probably all of you, I did not study product management. There isn't a university of product management. In my case, I'm a designer who then turned into a marketeer and lastly stumbled into a product career at then Facebook. My journey at Facebook started with a LinkedIn reach out. At the time, I had just moved to London. I knew that product people at Meta were very technical, most of them engineers, really. But most importantly, I had no friend who worked in big tech at the time I could ask for advice. When you look at this, I thought it was a scam. I genuinely thought, this is phishing. And I know it's crazy now, but this is almost 10 years ago. So what I did is, I did not reply. I know, crazy. I think 2 weeks in, I'm talking to my mom on the phone, and I casually mention about this reach out. And my mom pauses and goes, why wouldn't you reply? It's like, what do you have to lose? Fair. I got my very first interview at Meta, thanks to my mom. And against all expectation, frankly, I managed to pass the loop, and I started Facebook in 2015. Facebook in 2015 was a very different company than today. It was still a startup, very little process, a lot of smart people just trying to do the right thing, frankly, at the time. And in particular, Facebook London was tiny. You're talking about like 10 PMs, roughly 400 people, and actually half of these 10 PMs were not even from London. They came from California as part of the London team. And what they were doing was just recruiting, trying to pass the culture, and really trying to make the office successful. And so they did. We're 10x now. You're talking about over 150 PMs for a total of like 4,000 people. And you have big organization in London. You have a big presence for WhatsApp, Reality Labs, ads, privacy, and so on. And it's from this group of incredibly talented people, a bit crazy, that I learned a lot during the past 9 years. And that's what I actually think the most important lessons of all was really the art of consistently applying common sense. According to the Oxford Dictionary, common sense is sound and prudent judgment based on a simple perception of the situation or facts. What does it tell you? One, that you do not need to be an expert, subject matter expert, to apply common sense. And the second one, there is a built assumption that you are supposed and expected to use your intuition. And I think that's actually quite exceptional because a lot of frameworks out there completely blank out intuition. Now, of course, we are product people. And so we created a framework for common sense. The importance of codifying things is actually key. Because when you codify things, that's how you can scale them to your organization, and it becomes part of your culture. In our case, common sense means the following. You first understand. You understand the problem, your audience, and more importantly, why it matters. Secondly, you identify what is the most important and simplest plan to execute. And lastly, you execute, obviously, perfectly on that plan. Let's bring this to life. This is what Facebook looked like in 2005. I see some faces. Some of you recognize it. I was actually not on Facebook. I joined in 2007. What the team at the time noticed was that people were changing their profile pictures many times per day. 5, 10, sometimes 20. What was going on? They went into understand mode. And what they noticed is that people were changing their profile picture to tell the story of their life, minute by minute. There were photos of them at the pub with their friends, photos of the lunch for probably the first time in history. And so what the team did was like, we have to build a photo sharing product. Now, the challenge was that we had a very small team, and they were very worried because at the time, those were some of the most common photo sharing product out there. Shutterfly, Yahoo, Flickr. Those are big names. And we had really a team with 3 engineers. We couldn't build all of the features that those had. They had filters, they had red eye reduction, they had croppings. Fabulous. And so the team went to really, really deep. And they decided to build one feature. They really could only build one feature with 3 engineers. But the feature that they picked ended up changing the game. Tagging. This should be a video. It turns out that most people's photos are of people. All of these photo sharing websites were built around photo sharing as a craft, landscape, portraits. But when you are on a social network, the most important photos that you share are of your friends. In 2 to 3 years from launch, Facebook had as many photos than the top 10 services combined. It's still not stopped there. People were still changing their photo at a higher ratio than we expected. What was going on? The interesting thing this time was that they were changing their photos roughly at the same time. The team obviously wanted to understand, looked into it. And it turns out that people were changing their profile picture, the most important thing in a social network, to represent a cause. The first time we saw this at scale was the Je suis Charlie movement in 2015. Now, this led, in 72 hours, 3 engineers again, to build Prideify. 25 million people in only Pride weekend alone shared photos thanks to this feature. And that led to 500 million reactions. Those are big numbers. And the team changed the photo sharing industry. And they did so by understanding the problem and why it mattered, identified the best solution, and executing perfectly. Now, common sense does not only work for product problems. In 2017, I became very passionate about bringing our RPM program to London. The RPM program is our junior program for product people. And at the time, frankly, it just felt obvious. It was such a good thing for the community. I happened to know the person leading the program in Menlo Park, and so I just really reached out and said, how can I help you bring the same to London? It makes me smile now, but to my, at the time, biggest surprise, his very first question was, what problem are you trying to solve with it? Now, obviously, I wish I had a really good answer that I could share. I really didn't thought that through at the time. So I went into understand mode. And what I actually learned is that the core problem I was trying to solve was very similar to the US one, building a strong pipeline of junior PMs. But there were 2 core differences. The first one is that the number of teams in London was tiny, with a single-digit number of managers. And then the second one is that product management in Europe in 2017 was not a thing. People out of college thought it was a risky move. They weren't really interested. But on the contrary, what turned out to be industry hires, people with 1-2 years of experience, thought it was a brilliant way of changing their career. So this level of understand led to 2 things. We decided to take it in steps. And so at the end of 2017, we gave the opportunity to 3 people from the US, part of the original rotational program, to come to London. That helped us test if the London teams were ready. And then in January 2018, we applied the level and the learnings that we had to implement our very first class of RPMs in London. It was a very small class. It was 2-3 people a year. And we only opened it to industry hires, people with at least 1 year of experience. In 6 years, we have 27 RPMs that graduated from London and are some of the most successful people at the company today, actually. So, what does it say? My intuition was right, but I was only able to make it a success because I understood the problem, identified the right solution, and executed perfectly. But common sense cannot be applied only to organizational problems. Next Monday, I start a new role at WhatsApp. Yes, Marco, sorry, not business anymore. It took me 13 months to land this opportunity. When I came back from maternity leave roughly a year ago, I knew I was ready for a new challenge. I was a new mom, and I knew that I could not afford getting this wrong. I didn't have the energy, frankly. And if you have a small child, you probably know how much you sleep. I spent a bunch of time understanding what mattered to me. And this is the list. And I rigorously prioritized it. Prioritizing is a step that I see way too many people, especially in their career, not doing. And I knew in London, roles like this were really hard to come around, unfortunately. So I was ready to wait. My plan was simple. I've been at the company for 9 years. So I just wanted to leverage my internal network, put the word out, and then really focus on my job and do it well. Again, I knew it could have taken a while. Execution this time was really, really hard. I was itchy for a new change. I was continuously spinning my head on like, should I do this? Should I do that? I almost, not once, but twice, took a job that did not have all of the things I knew I care about. But I had done my understand, so I stuck to it. I trusted I had the right plan, and I just continued to execute. And 13 months later, the right opportunity came around. A previous manager of mine reached out of the blue, and she told me the following words: "Everyone I run into keeps telling me you want to work for me again." It felt a little bit like I was stoking her. It was fine. And then she told me, like, I just want to see if this opportunity could be a good fit. What I did was I really applied common sense, and this time to my career. So what are the key takeaways for you tonight? Listen to your mom. She often knows you best. Understand the problem and why it matters. Identify the best solution and execute impeccably. And lastly, do this until it becomes your second skin. And I want to stress this, because this is the hard bit, the last part. You have to do this exercise over and over until it really becomes natural to you. Until if someone asks you what problem you're trying to solve, you have a really strong, thought-through answer straight away. This is the only way that I've seen at scale that can help you build great product, great organizations, and great careers. Thank you.